Hi, I'm Clara Alexandrova, and you are watching the Permanent Rain Press.
Hi everyone, it's Chloe with the Permanent Rain Press today. I am so happy to be joined by Clara Alexandrova. How's it going?
Good, good. I'm so excited to be here and to talk about this show.
I'm so excited to have you and get to dive a bit deeper into your character, Kira, and Bet. But before we jump into the show, I wanted to ask, what can you share about your background in the arts and what sparked that passion in you?
Oh my goodness. This is like a prehistoric story. I was like 2 years old and I was really interested in music and dancing, and I would always just like dance around the house, sing around the house. And then my mom threw me into ballet at a really young age, just literally like I was walking, I was dancing. And I did that for basically all of my childhood. And through dance, I found that I really was attached to the idea of storytelling through movement, right? And like initially. And through storytelling to music, I found that I really liked storytelling through that medium as well. So I always had kind of, just my feet planted in like every territory when it came to performance. And I just wanted to do it all of the time. And just, yeah, whenever I could. And so I started to do music alongside dancing, and I was in like the Royal Conservatory for piano, and I was doing like piano exams as well as like ballet exams, and I was just like super rigid. And like my background is Ukrainian, so like just like my Slavic parents like really just hammering in just a sense of like determination, goal setting, and discipline within me at a young age was just like such a beautiful jumping off point for me. Later in life, when I graduated high school, I found the theater program through my high school. I went to Handsworth Secondary School in North Vancouver here, and they have a beautiful theater program, like beautiful. And I really fell in love with storytelling through this medium. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. Like I'm getting high off of this. Like there's no. I found that through like discipline in being good and polished in technique with ballet and piano, it almost felt like there was a bit of a ceiling when it came to what was possible. Um, and I really liked breaking rules, and it felt like throughout my experience in the arts, there was always a lot of rigid rules around, these very, yeah, polished forms of art. And so with acting, I was like, oh my God, I can dive into the most messiest, ugliest parts of my own wounds and then make it something that moves people and makes people feel things, which is the whole reason that I'm doing these other, forms of art in the first place. So it really just felt like, wow, I'm never going to be able to get perfect at this. I'm never going to be able to be the best at this. There's never going to be a ceiling. So therefore it's going to be like a lifelong endeavor. And so I was like, it just all clicked. And so I graduated, and then I, went on my search of, acting training, and I trained around Vancouver and just did classes here and there. And then I, got a hold of an agent, and my agent now, Lena at Play, and I've expanded since then, and now we're here. And it's just been audition after audition and just trusting the process and being like, you know what? The right thing will come at the right time, and I just have to be ready for when it's there. And I have my parents to thank for putting me in ballet and piano, for really like being, I'm super I always want to be ready like all the time, and I'm constantly manifesting and imagining the next opportunities and what's possible. And yeah, I like to be as ceilingless as possible. So yeah, that's kind of how I got here, I guess.
It's so beautiful to look back on your journey and also the different mediums that you were kind of were taught at a young age. And
Mhm.
it's so nice to have that kind of dance background as well and music. And we'll talk about the music that you make a bit later on, but we'll get into Bet, where you, of course, star as Kira. this is based off the Japanese manga Kakegurui, and Kira is based off the character Kirari. So,
Mhm.
what specific elements did you draw inspiration from for Kira from the source material? And are there any other fictional characters or performances that informed you?
I really connected with, well, I, was, diving into this art and this character and understanding like what we were, inspired by and what we were going off of. And I, of course, was doing my character development and in my process of building Kira. And I wanted to really hone in on her sense of status and how her status informs everything about the way that she behaves. And so, something that I really appreciate about the source material and about Kirari is her stillness and her specificity in her focus when she is interacting with people and when she is, scheming, when she has a plan that's taking place. It's hard for me to ever do her justice because she's such a beloved character, and I wouldn't even want to try. But ours is very, very, very different. But I think that that was really informative for me in my process to really flip through and look at her face and how it's almost unchanging throughout her, how she's feeling and what's going on. She's very still, and the stillness is very eerie. And I found that to be very fascinating because I think that a lot of the time with actors specifically, or in like, real everyday life, we think that, power means to be loud. And when we want to like move an audience with like anger or frustration or like power, we think to like yell or we think to, make a big gesture. But that, in like a lot of forms of acting, we think about that as like a third circle kind of approach, which is kind of outside of you, which is actually like a form of overcompensation, which doesn't really exhibit any control. And control is really the thing that will show someone how powerful you are. And I think that control of oneself is really the thing that can be the most impactful on an audience. And so when I was developing the character and I was going through the scenes, and I mean, I prepped like crazy. Everything about Kira is like she's the most calculated, being on the face of the earth. I mean, she doesn't do anything, and Kirari as well. And this is like that's the through line is there's not a single thing that happens that isn't meticulously calculated for like weeks, months on end before it even, leaves the mouth of the character. So yeah, to just be very specific, to just be very present and in moments where I felt like, oh, like me, Clara, would want to like yell this at this person and then they'd fold. I'd be like, no, no, because that's not powerful. That's not status. And so it was really like I had to keep bringing myself back into like this cold and calculated place where she's actually really enjoying it and she's really playing. And that's kind of the game is the manipulation. And manipulation is, I mean, you have to be brilliant to master that. You have to be very intelligent to master that. So yeah, the intelligence and the control and the stillness was really those were the things that I really kept going back to with the source material for this character.
It's always really fascinating to hear from the actors, like the grounding factors for them. And you mentioned the stillness. Like she was always very poised, although later, of course, you see it start to crack with the arrival of Yumeko. But
Right.
before we get into those relationships, how was it creating her look with the hair, makeup, and wardrobe departments? Like, how would you describe her signature style and the messaging behind that signature bold blue lipstick?
Yeah, the blue lipstick. That was definitely crazy for sure. I mean, when I found out that I was going to be wearing blue lipstick, I was like, what? Okay. And I was so afraid. I was like, am I going to look clownish? Is this going to even fit? Like, how is this going to be naturalistic at all? Like, I had to really think about it. I had to really, sit with that and find a real bridge that would make it feel as organic and human as possible so that I didn't feel like a phony going out there. Um, like a circus clown. I didn't want that. And so I mean, the whole process of, building this character, from the outside in and from the inside out was just all very trauma informed. And I really approached her with emphasis on what it means to be an abuse victim and what it means to be in a survival mode chronically. And what it means to be safe and what it means to be in control and how that would manifest in the way that she looks. And I really wanted to imagine, like, every day, every scene that I was in, like, what was her morning routine? How long did it take? Like, she's getting up in the morning and she has to make her hair big. Why? Because she wants to take up space. She wants to, like, show this sense of, I'm here and I want to have this iconic, you see my silhouette and you know it's me. And she wanted to always make herself be very unique. And all of it, I mean, the hair, the headband, the lipstick, the heavy makeup, and the makeup always being different and always being, almost like stage makeup, like, like the crazy liner and, the blue inner eye and the, just how it was kind of graphic sometimes. And of course the blue lipstick and like the really heavy face makeup, how her face is always, covered in foundation and it's always really thick and you don't really see her. It's purposeful and it's actually her armor and it's actually her way of protecting herself because, you know, she was taught from a very young age from her father that, being vulnerable is being weak. And if you're vulnerable, then that can be immediately used against you. And all that she ever grew up watching and seeing was, this really intense and violent, just power dynamic of her parents and her father's, co-workers, co-workers, colleagues, the men that do really bad things. And she just like bared witness to it all of the time. So I think that all of it is just a product of just really intense conditioning that just never lets up. And she's, throughout the whole series, she's still being conditioned as you see throughout the scenes. And with, my character's mom coming in and it just, she's always getting cracked down on. So yeah, and the blue lipstick for me was, I had this image of her. This is really dark, but this is the character. And this kind of exploration was like really, again, like trauma informed. And I wanted to bridge that gap between me and her and find this sense of her inner child all of the time. And so the blue lipstick really came from, I think, her as a child, more like a preteen, like entering middle school and starting to play with makeup and starting to be like, okay, I'm entering the school system and I know that I'm going to end up at St. Dom's and I know that I'm going to, have to like eventually take over my father's, empire. And so how do I cover up my bruised face, my blue bruised lips? How do I present myself in a way that will be unique and, catching to the eye and discerning from everybody else and show a really intense sense of confidence when really the blue lipstick was, she's covering the bruises on her mouth, she's being abused at home, she has no way out. And, it's just like this really, really tragic, devastating, melancholic energy of this character. But that's who she is at her core. She's hiding so that she can gain more power. So yeah, it's just a whole ploy to just avoid vulnerability at any cost. Yeah.
There's something so powerful about presence, like presence in a room. And I just love how you articulated like having that blue lipstick and what that meant for your Kira. And you mentioned abuse that's touched on a bit throughout the season, that obviously her mother's being abused, but in your eyes, I guess Kira was also like a victim of that abuse growing up, and that
Yeah.
kind of shaped who she was. Kira's mom indicates that she also has a soft spot for her half sister, Riri. So, how did you interpret their relationship, like Kira and Riri, and the dynamics between them?
Oh my goodness. Well, me and Onwin, who plays Riri, we would, we bonded so quickly on set, and we would always chit chat about, what our inner child process when it came to, this creation of this story. And we always imagined our characters as children, secretly running off to go play, and then always getting, yelled at and always getting punished for playing, because playing is for normal kids. Playing is for, kids that aren't going to amount to anything, kids that aren't being conditioned to be great one day and take over a massive empire. And so I always felt, from my perspective as the actor, I felt like our characters were always like, well, I'm dad's plan A and your dad's plan B. And as the plan A, I'm responsible for you not falling behind, for you not, you know, getting swept up in everything. And I always felt protective of her. And I always felt like, and there's the scene where we kind of see a little bit a bit of that in Kira, and a little bit of her ability to actually love and be loyal, because they are in an allyship from the very beginning. And I always thought that Kira's, goal and determination to, take over her father's empire was to actually bring justice forward into the system, and to actually make it so that, she knows that she has to act exactly like him in order to gain any sense of, being seen or heard or even considered for this, job. But in the end, once she like reigned supreme, she would actually heal the system and bring forward an actual, an actually just way of going about things. And Riri would be beside her. And she knows and has seen, Riri's mom also being, hurt and harmed. And the whole thing is just really messed up. So in my eyes, Riri is someone that I protect and care for and love, and, use to my advantage, because she's the only one that I know is going to be able to like get things done right, because I know I can get things done right, because I didn't have a choice growing up, and I know she didn't get that choice, to not to mess things up. So yeah, it's kind of like she's someone I can depend on, because yeah, she's gonna do it the way that I most likely would. And then obviously we see throughout the season that Riri is kind of, she's her own individual, and she has her own, set of ideas and pursuits that she's on. And um, yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll have to see what people think and gather from who Riri really is, and if that's really the truth, if that's really what's going on.
Yeah, it's interesting for Kira because she, like you said, she kind of sees Riri as a bit of her own responsibility as well.
Yeah,
And you mentioned we do get that moment when she says to Riri, like, things will be better,
yeah,
once I'm in charge. So there's
mm,
almost there's a seed of hope there
yeah,
for a maybe more positive, less abusive future for all of them. Can
yeah.
you summarize Kira's feelings towards Yumiko and how they grow in intensity throughout the season as she continues to disrupt the school hierarchy as well as Kira's control?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, at the beginning, it's very much a curiosity. And from from the start, it's, I think that Kira's just pleased that there's somebody that's, you know, able to have this sense of discernment from others. And she kind of she appreciates their how they relate in some ways when it comes to the confidence and the love for the game and all of these things. However, Kira's coming at, this whole system from the place where she doesn't have a choice. And it's interesting because Yumiko kind of is in a similar place where she feels like she doesn't have a choice. She has to bring justice forward. And Kira's coming from, again, like I just said, a place where she wants to bring justice forward. But the way that they're going about it is very unique and interesting and, messy for sure. Um, but yeah, it's kind of like. I'm seeing her and I'm watching her play well and have this effect and impact on my system, and I think I appreciate it because I'm not easily, intimidated. But once the season goes on and I see that Yumiko doesn't care for the system, she doesn't care for um, what I've built, and it's a disrespect in my eyes. I then feel my control start to slip, and it's all that I have. It's all that I have to feel like I have any value in life. So the stakes are definitely high. And we see that like in episode 4 and in the House Wars, and it's kind of that was really the episode where I felt like this is Kira's turning point, where Yumiko is now in it. Like she's kind of every room she's in, she has her own system and people follow. And she didn't use intimidation. She didn't really use manipulation. She didn't. So it kind of it's all a big throw in my face. Like it's all kind of a I feel discredited, if that makes sense. And it's almost like my character is realizing, oh, I didn't have to be like my father. I could have just been myself. And that makes her so angry because she's in denial. She's still in the abuse. She's still in the survival. She's still in that system that is unjust that she cannot get out of. So here is Yumiko basically being like, you don't have to be mean and you don't have to be awful and things can be just all the time. And she's just kind of like this beacon of light and fun and charisma and charm. And of course she's mysterious. I know that she's smarter than she lets on because I'm intelligent and I can understand that, you can only be that good if you have something going on deeper that's helping you. Like if you have this like brilliance within you. And I think that I saw that potential. And so I had to keep digging. And I really wanted to, break it all down and prove to myself that no, I did the right thing. I did have to be like my father. That doesn't work. And so she's just like a massive challenge and a massive wrench in my plan. And but truly throughout the whole series, there is a massive appreciation and a massive allure towards her. And I'm curious. And I think that there's even like a sense of like attraction, and of course Kira would never allow herself to be vulnerable in the system and in the dynamic of what she's built. But I think that of course everybody deep down wants love, wants connection, and Kira has always had to be safe and protected from that because it would only be, it would only exploit her, it would only be something that could exploit her and bring her down. But I think that with Yumiko, it's like, oh wow, someone is just as smart as me. And I think that actually attracts her in, and it's like this, classic hate and love, or if there's a fine line between them. And so this distaste and this frustration towards Yumiko is truly, I think there's something softer going on way deeper, maybe at a subconscious level that Kira doesn't realize, maybe until the end of the series, but we still don't know. And I can't even speak to that because I don't know where it's going to go. But, I can only hope that it would lead into a place where we see Kira soften and that relationship becomes a true allyship that Kira deserves truly at her core because she's just a human being.
It's so interesting to, probably a good challenge for you to play off of those different things, like being intrigued, being impressed, but also you said, feeling discredited, feeling threatened, because
Mhm.
while Kira at her core might have a different idea of leadership, she knows that with the pressure from her parents, that is just not possible. And she really has to double down on that power and that control that she has. Your scenes opposite Miku, of course, as Yumeko were so strong, especially in episodes 9 and 10. So let's start with that poisoned drink and kiss.
Okay.
As an intimate scene, how was that to film in terms of trust and comfortability, but also acting out Kira's heightened emotions?
Well, what's awesome is me and Miku are in love off screen. Like we just get each other creatively. Immediately we felt so safe to just communicate and be so clear and really like workshop these characters and workshop these scenes and really go there. And I mean, like, I could not have felt safer. And that day was, we both knew it was like, today is probably one of the most important days in terms of shooting in this series. This scene is so heightened and the stakes are so high. We need to get lost in it. Like, we didn't even really have the capacity to like even chit chat between those takes. We didn't even really have the capacity to, you know, and I'm talking about like the basement scene specifically. We were so, and that was a long, stretch of scene that, they yell action and we're in it for a while. Like that's not a short scene. Um, and every time we did it, it was just, we just stayed there and we were both like shaking and we like felt high and like we were just like pumped full of like adrenaline and like cortisol and we were just like so in it. Like I know that I've said that so many times but I like don't even know how else to describe it. It felt really, it just kind of overtook us and it was really really cool. We definitely got lost in it. And, when we finished that scene, we were both like, whoa. And we laughed about it. We were like, whoa, that was a trip. Like, that felt like we were on drugs, like, or whatever that would feel like. Like, I don't even, it was hard to explain, but I remember shooting those scenes and like actually being in the scene and just feeling like it was such an I got you moment and it was so thrilling for my character and it was like a checkmate moment for my character. And so it was pumped full of adrenaline. And then of course, when everything comes crashing down and then we have that like intimate moment. I don't know. I think that I just got so lucky with Miku and we just got so lucky with each other that there was no there was no room for us to even want to discuss if there was a possibility of that being weird. Like it was just, we love our characters so much. We love the script so much. We are so grateful that we got to be there that we just really wanted to dive in as deep as we could and just go there. And for those moments on that set, we were Kira and Yumeko. And then once they yelled cut and we got the scene, then we laughed our asses off and we were like, what the hell was our jobs are crazy. Like that is the most insane day at work, like day at the office. But I'm so happy with how it turned out. And, I of course watched it and I was just like, oh my God, no way. So I hope that people have a similar reaction. A lot went into it. So yeah.
I mean, it was such a good ending to episode 9 to obviously set up the season finale. So you had that high stakes blackjack game. Was there any improv involved? And that scene in the back and forth between you and Miku, as well as, having to act out that poison taking over your body, which was also entertaining to say the least.
Cool. I'm so glad. Yeah, there was improv. I mean, that day, like, though it was like a day and a half of just the whole game that we filmed. And the actor, was suffering from an endometriosis flare. So I was in like so much pain for like a day and a half, and I was like popping Advils. And I'm a little bit nuts, and I love acting so much that I was like, oh my goodness, like this is perfect for my character and I'm going to use it. And I'm like, it's okay. The set medic's right there. If I need another Advil, I'll take one. But like, I'm so here and I'm so in the moment. And I just had to like, just be present and just surrender to what was and just trust that like the pain that I was in and like the state of my body was like exactly how I was supposed to feel that day in order to do that job. And it did read it. It did actually really help me. And there was a lot of improvisation actually that came from that, from me and Miku sitting across from each other at that table and just like we, your body doesn't know that you're acting, which is a really, fascinating thing, physiologically about this job is when you breathe deeply and slowly from your diaphragm and you blink slowly and you swallow a certain way and you visualize yourself being in a physical state that is not comfortable, that is lethargic, you actually start to become that way. And it's really fascinating how you can manipulate your own body. And so once we were, doing these things and we stayed consistent, like take after take, like people taking 5, people taking 10, we're still there because we know that they can, at the drop of a hat, we have to be right back in it and we don't want to lose it. So me and Mika just felt like we were at a sleepover and it was 3 a.m. and like everything was hilarious. And we were just laughing, like we felt drunk and we weren't. We were, just breathing interestingly and just playing pretend, but your body doesn't know. And of course, I was in so much pain. And so I was, I was, we were just, yeah, we got lost in it like we usually do. And there's like this moment in the show, and I'm so glad that it made it into the final cut, where I slapped myself. And that was completely improvised. And I remember I did that. And then Simon, our director and amazing creator, and like the father of all of us characters, us actors, he came over and he was like, that was awesome. Like, I don't know where that came from, but it was beautiful. Do it again. And I was like, oh, I guess I did do that. Like, I was just so there and was filled with like, just, I can't even explain the feelings that I was feeling, but there was like frustration. There was like just exhaustion and pain and worry and all these things, like as me, the actor, mixed with the character. And it was a beautiful foundation for this absolutely nutso circumstance that we watched take place. And yeah, that blackjack game was definitely one of the most rewarding acting experiences of my life so far. I mean, after we wrapped, I thought about that whole, that episode and all of that happening in that game particularly. Oh my gosh, for months. I mean, I was like, okay, yep, that's like probably the best acting I've ever done because wasn't. I was like literally there. And I have never experienced such like a manipulation of my own physiological state in my life. So I felt like a wizard. I felt like an acting wizard. It was great.
I applaud you for powering through that, even though you were actually in physical pain
Yeah.
yourself. I feel for you, but it came through
Yeah.
so well. And, splashing the water, like you mentioned, slapping her face. I mean,
Yeah.
they just were so out of it. I spoke with some of your cast members because I was just like, how is it possible that no one knew that they were just so out of sorts during
Yeah.
that game? But hey, it made for a really good scene. And speaking of, abuse, you had the physical and emotional altercations Kira did with her father,
Mhm.
Arkadi, and Riri as well. So take me through how she is handling that rejection. Like, how do you prepare for physical moments like that?
Mhm. Well, what's interesting about the slap and the blackjack game of me hitting myself, it was a happy accident, but it was a fully in character decision because the abuse of in Kira's life was, it served a purpose in her eyes based on the way that it was conditioned into her, right? Like the abuse and the physical violence was from her father's teaching was, I'm doing a good thing for you and I'm doing this because I love you, because I want you to succeed and I want you to be rigid and I want you to go far in this world. And if you aren't punished, if you aren't snapped into shape, if you don't feel the whip crack down on you, you know, hypothetically, whatever, like you might get soft. You might not be able to have what it takes in the end to be a leader, to be someone that's successful, to take over what I have built. And so in the moments where I'm slipping away and I slap myself, it was in the moment like this feeling of like, well, I know that my dad's right there. And I know that, maybe as a kid when I was being taught how to gamble or whatever, if I'm slipping out of it and I'm losing my shape and I'm losing my edge, I'm getting hit. And it's going to snap me into shape. And it's a horrible, horrible thing. But, from this character's perspective, that's how I fix things, is violence. As we see throughout the season and how people talk about Kira and what she's, done and all these different things. So leading up to, that physical altercation with my father, she's so broken down at that point. And of course, that game was, I mean, being in that state is maybe one of the most vulnerable things that Kira could do, is be like that in front of everybody. But again, she's playing a game and she's there to win, and so it's whatever. It's whatever. But when she's talking to him, and of course, like, she kind of confronts him, it's this sense of, I'm going to show you that I am like you. And maybe then you will see that I'm worthy. Because he's confrontational. He is violent. He's, you know what I mean? So her whole thing is, if I act exactly like you, you might then love me because you only love yourself. And it obviously backfires. But I think it frees her in the end. I think it truly does free her. And I think that there's an element subconscious, like there's like a subconscious feeling in her that knows if this goes how it might very well, that it most likely will go, I actually will be free to, switch sides, to do the thing that I want to do, is bring justice into the system. But maybe the way that I was going about it was wrong. Maybe Yumeko was right. Maybe I did need to be broken open so that I could, reinvent myself and kind of give birth to a new version of me that is actually more powerful. And maybe my angle was wrong. And so, of course, that moment is humiliating. It's humiliating. But I think that more than anything, she's just exhausted and she's just tired. Um, and of course, with Riri doing that, it was so emotional. It was so emotional on the day. And I remember I was sitting outside in the backyard of that house, that beautiful house, and I was like, how do I get there? As Clara, our whatever the hell of the day, and we're shooting this massive scene. How do I get there? How do I go there? How can this be real? What wound is it really? Like, what is the real wound here? Why is she really crying? Why is she really devastated? And what I found in that moment was, oh my God, she needs her mom, which is so interesting because her mom's there, right? Like, sure, she's there. She's watching the whole thing, but there's such a disconnect. It's like Kira, I realized in that moment, Kira really raised herself. And based on everything that she learned from an abusive cycle, And so in that moment, it's like, well, she was about to die, right? Like this poison, it's like completely tearing her apart. And she's like, my mortality is at stake. I'm gambling on my mortality. And hey, I don't really care. I just want to be seen and loved because I have been robbed of that my whole life. And so, yeah, I think that I knew, because again, like I said before, Kira is calculated. She's brilliant and intelligent. She does not do anything without a very specific, clear objective. And she knew that if she caused a scene, her mom would interject. And she just wanted her mom. And so, and hey, the only way that she gets love The only way that she gets any resources to like survive is to manipulate, because that's what she was taught because of abuse. So it's like this really deep, painful, traumatic foundation for choice making, and it always comes back to that, and it always leads back to her father. um so yeah, poor Kira. Feel for her, poor thing. Love her, she definitely deserved better. And yeah, I'm excited to see what we see next, because again, like in these moments, like I think that she knows that she was wrong. She knows that her life has been unfair. And I think that that's what it really is. That's really what the breakdown is. And she's like, God damn it, I didn't deserve any of this. I don't want any of this. I actually don't. I never wanted any of this. And to circle back to the Riri question about our dynamic, and I wanted to say this and I forgot, but this is a good opportunity, is Riri's role in my life was to ground me and remind me of that this isn't mine, that I didn't want this, that I'm actually somebody outside of my father. But I would always argue and be like, no, 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 but you don't get it. I'm outsmarting him because I'm actually going to make things better. But Riri always was like, you're going to get lost in it. You're going to get lost in it. And so she's kind of somebody that is a voice of reason. And we kind of see that in episode 7 in The Hunt, right? Like where Riri's kind of there, and she brings me back down in a sense. And I can depend on her to be there and do that and remind me of who I am underneath of it all, because she's seen that. She's the only person that we know of so far, that we know of. I have theories about, other characters and other connections and backstories and history, but from what we can gather from this year, like this season, is that Riri is really the only person that has seen Kira unmasked and has seen Kira for who she really is throughout her life, and has watched her kind of become who we see her as in present day. And so for Riri to kind of show me that I couldn't trust her, that that wasn't the case, that she was actually playing a better game than me, that she won. You know what I mean? That is something that is, I think that it just makes me be like, I don't want this anymore. And it actually is freeing. And maybe Riri knows that. I mean, like I could talk to Anwen about this for 5 hours straight, I'm sure, because we love to chit chat, but I'm sure that Anwen probably agrees that there is a sense of, again, we were raised by the same men and in the same system. So I can imagine that Riri is just as calculated and is, has a clear objective as well. So I imagine that Riri maybe knew that deep down, if she crossed Kira and actually executed it properly and actually won, that it would actually free Kira. And that's really what she wanted. And I think that, when we were shooting that, me and On, when we're talking about that emotional moment between me and Riri, where I could have kept going. I could have really hurt her. I could have really, really hurt her. And I'm capable of it. And I hurt people. And that's something that I do. I'm just like my father, right? But I don't. I stop. And I just wait for my mom to just interject because I know that she will. But I'm looking at her, and Riri's emotional and Riri's heartbroken, because I think part of her is like relieved and sees the real me and is like, finally, there she is. I freed you. You're welcome. But of course, it comes at the cost of our relationship breaking apart. But I think that part of Riri knows that if I kept going the way that I was, it would have killed me. And it nearly did at the party. So, because all I wanted was to like win over my dad, right? And it literally almost killed me. So I think it's all it's very nuanced and it's very complicated, but it's dark. It's very dark, truly.
Yeah, it's all very tragic to think about, these characters where they're at in their lives and the pressures put on them, especially with the two half sisters by their father and, his criminal empire and
Yeah.
what they could inherit, but is that something they really want? That kind of leads to her unexpected partnership with Yumeko by episode's end. So she hears that Yumeko's plan is now to take down the entire board, Arkadi included. So why is this the right power move for Kira at this point?
Oh my goodness, because I think at this point Kira is just completely surrendered to the fact that the system is completely corrupt and she was never going to gain anything that she was promised, and that it was all a big lie and it's evil and it's wrong. And, you know, I think, yeah, everything has been shattered. The illusion has been shattered and she sees it for what it really is. And I think in the moments between, Yumeko and Kira when they're alone and Kira learns more about who Yumeko really is and how, like, she learns and sees how she's been truly impacted in her life by my father and by this system and by this club. Like, it's eye-opening. And I remember in that moment, I'm talking about the bathroom scene specifically, where as the actor, I was there and I was present, I was listening, and you can only prep so much, but then once you're in the moment and you're there on the day, you kind of have to just let it all go and see what happens and just be these characters. And I remember when she talks about, her truth as the character and what's really been going on and how she actually is affected. And the way that I looked at her, I remember listening to her and hearing this and being like, it was almost like a light bulb went off in my head, being connected to Kira and being like having played Kira in that moment. A light bulb was going off and it was like, oh, we both could have had normal lives. We both could have had love. We both could have been nourished and raised and cared for. And we do deserve that. And of course, this horrible situation and these horrible circumstances bred very brilliant young women, but at what cost? And so having this like circle back moment, this callback to like the start of the interview where I was like, they both are fighting for justice. The way that they're going about it is in very, questionable ways where, the audience could be like, is that actually going to get you what you want? And hey, once you get that, are you even going to be clear that that's ever what you wanted? That's kind of these questions that, I ask from, reading and watching the story unfold. And so I think at that moment, it kind of, yeah, like I've said this, but it's a crash down moment where just the illusions just keep shattering. And it's a element of let's take our power back, and we deserve to have we deserve to be free, essentially, to do as we please and be who we really are and do what we really want and figure out what that means for us. And of course, in this season, we see all of their different abilities and how brilliant they are and all the different ways and how calculated they are and all these different things. So it'll be really interesting to see, as the story unfolds, kind of, they have so much at their disposal. They have so many tools in their toolboxes to, really bring this whole thing down. And yeah, it's the right choice because Kira, she realizes that she was never gonna get what it is that she thought she wanted, So yeah, that's why it's the right choice. And I'm sure that I'll continue to figure out more about that the more that I, see clips of the show and talk with my castmates and reflect on this. There's always more that comes up. It's like it's very layered, so it's cool.
I'm sure it's a very fluid thing where you're always going to be thinking like, what does power mean to my character? What is
Yeah.
important to my character? Now, being inspired by any popular beloved manga would draw the attention of many. So how conscious were you in the cast of this fact and wanting to do the source material justice, but also balancing that with telling your own story and bringing something new to your character?
So I always felt like in my process as an actor, I really value connecting, me, the actor's wounds into the character so that it can be as organic on the day and in front of the camera as possible so that it can move people. And so that's always been my approach, no matter what. And of course, I did my homework, and I read up on the source material, and I really dove into it. And at a certain point, I was, reading our scripts, and I was, diving into the source, and I was realizing that, you know, I'm I don't know that, with Karari is so beloved, and she's so iconic, and it was very clear from the beginning, that we are pulling inspiration from this material, and that it is not a direct adaptation, and we are not trying to make this um, our own, and we're not taking it, basically, but more so that it is inspiring a new world to be created. And it was more of a homage than anything else. And I think that, especially when we were discovering her style, and, my hair, like, I'm not blonde, and I didn't have bangs in the show, and I didn't have the loop braids, but of course, like, we tried a bunch of different things, and it really just it came down to what how do we, pay some homage. Of course, we've got the blue lipstick, and you know it's more of like an essence, and an energy that I bring, that I really pulled in terms of that. um but to really make it as organic as possible, to not make it be like I'm walking on set and I'm playing a character, but I'm walking on set and I'm able to really be rooted and grounded, and this is a fully fleshed out human being, with clear motivation and all of these things, and a very clear backstory. Which, again, like, my process is, I get hired to do a job, and I go about it in a very specific way, because I know what works for me. And so what works for me is to really do self exploration, and pull of my own stuff. So in terms of, like, doing the source material justice, I hope that fans of the source material would be able to um, understand, and have just compassion for that, and an understanding that creative process is something that is very sacred. And again, it was the whole script from the beginning was so different. The whole thing, the characters, there's new people, there's some people that aren't there, there's people that are blends of characters, and it's all mostly paying homage. And so I understand that, fans of the manga are very protective of their beloved, you know, art that they just really love. And I totally appreciate that. And I find that very inspiring, because I'm like, wow, like, it's really, really beautiful to see, like, how protective and how passionate people can become for the sake of art, in the name of art. And so it shows me that, when people are discussing our show in relation to the manga, and how it's very different, and people's own opinions, and their discussions about that, whether it be positive, negative, or, somewhere in the middle, neutral. I think that it's just, I hold so much space for it, because I think that, as someone that loves art, and, like, lives, breathes, and dies by it, I totally respect the need to discuss, and voice the impact that art can have on oneself. Um, but yeah, I think that, yeah, it was very unique, and genuinely a lot of its own thing. And we love where it was derived from, and we love the source material and those characters, and I feel connected to them and to that story. And I think it's beautiful, and I think it's perfectly done, and I think it's so awesome. But I definitely would say to the fans of the manga or the anime alike, that our show is not that. Like, it's just not that, and we're not trying to be that. And we respect the admiration, and, like, the devotion to those characters, and we would never try to, you know, be them. We actually did our best to bring something completely new, and pay homage where we could, but also within the bounds of having it be as organic as possible for us, the actors, because we're just doing our job at the end of the day, you know? So, yeah, that's kind of what I'd say.
I think that you all did a phenomenal job, and you have to give yourself, grace and space as well, because this is a new world and you want to be able to build and expand upon that. So
Of
I think
course.
it's important as an artist to kind of be able to get in the mindset of a new character and be able to actually make those creative decisions for yourself. And you're clearly doing that with Kira. So congratulations on the show.
Thank you so much. That's amazing.
You are a North Vancouver local. What do you enjoy about being from Vancouver? And for those visiting the city for the first time, what are some of your activity, place, or food recommendations?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I love North Van because I love the trails. I love a good trail. I think that if you go to North Vancouver, you got to go to the dam. You got to go to Cleveland Dam up on Capilano Road. It is gorgeous. And the trails down there are beautiful. And I frequent around Lynn Valley specifically, and Lynn Canyon is beautiful. The suspension bridge is beautiful. I'm a very um I'm definitely from BC. Like I love to be in the forest. I love to get covered in dirt out on a trail. And yeah, so Vancouver is, I mean, beautiful, and I just love being outside. So I'm like, if you come here, go outside. Like don't be inside, go outside. Even if it's raining, go outside. It's gorgeous. And I think food recommendations. I mean, my favorite sushi spot in North Vancouver, which like I don't know that I've tried that many. I'm kind of like a loyal, like if my family orders from a place, like that's our place. Like that's where we order from. Like that's the best place you can get this kind of food from. And like I just like will die on that hill. But my favorite two sushi places are Yama Sushi in Lynn Valley. They're like a really small place, but I'm like, I have always had their sushi and I've like never had a problem. It's always amazing. And then Sushi Umi on Lonsdale. Love it. Love it. They have like Sushi Umi is like a very like creative menu, I think. Like they have like sushi pizza and like a bunch of different things that are like fun to try. Um, but yeah, other than that, I don't know, like I think that Lonsdale Key is like the place to go to like try foods if you're a foodie. I don't know. It's just like cute and there's a lot of little like vendors and it feels fun in there. I like it there.
It's always nice to go to like a market and there's always something new to try, right? Always
Yes.
new like vendors to browse like local goods and things like that. So it's nice to
Yeah.
hear your recommendations, of course, being outdoors. I think you went on a trip somewhere else. Was it in BC or nearby province recently
Yeah.
as well
I
and got to get some sun?
I love going up to Whistler so much because it's gorgeous. Whistler and Pemberton are like, I mean, I'm up there all the time because I have friends up there. I mean, one of my best friends lives up there. She lives in Pemberton. And so anytime that I need to decompress or just like chill out and just like lose phone service, like her and I will just go up to a lake and just sit around and listen to some music. She's gonna always throw on those country tunes, and I'm always gonna be tapping my foot and just relax and forget about everything and just giggle and have a grand little time. I also I grew up like on and around farms because I actually like moved to Vancouver from Fort Langley when I was like 13 or 12, like around that. So I grew up like horseback riding out in Langley, like out in like the creeks and in the farmland and in the more agricultural areas. So like that's really like where my heart lies and like that's really what's nostalgic for me. So going up to Pemberton, it's kind of like that because there's like so many farms and there's horseback riding out there and it's very you really feel like you're like in the country, which is it's just it's heartwarming to me because it reminds me of my childhood. So Yeah,
So nice to have that close to home as well. Like you don't have to go that far to get like the best of both worlds.
absolutely.
You make music under LöLä and you released your debut single Bones last year. Tell me about the music that you like to make and write and your journey to doing that professionally because you mentioned playing piano when you were younger. So how did that manifest into, the songwriting and the singing aspect of what you do now?
Well, I mean, of course, yes, my love for music started with through the medium of piano, but I always kind of sang and I love to perform and I love to again story tell as we know, as I've said. Um, and it was really during COVID that I started getting into rock music, and I really started to fall back. Well, when I was a kid, I loved playing rock band in my basement. And so that really informed everything for me. That informed most of my personality, to be honest. Playing the drums on Mississippi Queen when I was like 8, being like, I'm going to be a rock star. And I don't know how I'm going to get there. I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't care. I just know that's meant for me. But I'm also going to be an actress and I'm also going to be a ballerina. I really, truly, I hate ceilings and I hate limitations. And I've never been one to place those on myself and I don't plan to. But I was like, wow, like rock music really like makes me feel awesome. And my dad also raised me on, he put me onto the Beatles and Queen and like all the classics of just, his time. And yeah, during COVID, I was like, okay, I need to pick up a guitar because everyone needs a hobby now, apparently, and it's not going to be 2 weeks, so we're stuck here. So I got to have something to do. And so I was listening to a lot of 90s grunge music and I was, playing my my Facebook Marketplace electric guitar and I felt awesome and I was really bad at it and I didn't care. And it was just this sacred thing for me and it felt very aligned and I just would listen to rock music and I'd try to learn some of the chords and I would sing along and I was just like, okay, I'm going to learn how to play the guitar and then I'm going to be able to start writing my own music. And the moment that I get to start doing that, I have won. And then I eventually started to do that and I always knew that I wanted to be in a band and I had no idea how that was going to happen. I just kind of was gently manifesting that out into the universe, being like, I want to be in a band. Don't know how that would come to be or why or who, but like, I want to be in a band. And then one day I just like, me and my friends were always like going to this random bar downtown called Back and Forth Bar. Shout out Back and Forth Bar. They've seen me at my best and my worst. It's a ping pong bar. I'm horrible at ping pong. They've seen the best and worst of me there. But my bandmate Zachariah was working there and we just got along and we had mutual friends and we always got to talking about music and our shared interest in it. And he was like, me and my friend Josh, my other bandmate now, we're trying to start a band and we're actually looking for a member. Come jam with us. And I was like, you don't want me to jam with you? I'm horrible at guitar. And they were like, we don't care. Just come hang, if anything. Because we should just be friends. And I was like, okay, cool, then I'll come. And then I went, and then the rest was history. And then all of a sudden, we booked our first show through some of our friends. They were putting on a show. Another Vancouver band, Sleepy Gonzalez. Shout out Sleepy Gonzalez. They were playing at a spot that is no longer. It was Buddha's on Hastings, and they were playing a show. And they were like, "How about play with us?" And we were like, oh my God, we have to figure out what the hell we're going to play. But then all of a sudden we just compiled a bunch of originals and my bandmates would just send me demos and be like, you're going to sing on this one, write something. And then it would just be a blank rock song. And I would just pour my heart out on a piece of paper. And then I'd be like, done, written, let's play it like that. And then that's just kind of how it snowballed from there. And then of course, Bones was written like maybe 2 years ago now. And that was when I was really in the peak of just like sitting on my floor and playing the goddamn guitar like all the time. Like, you know, dealing with my own stuff and trying to process my own emotions and my own traumas and my, whatever I was feeling in the moment, I'd always just like run to my guitar and pick it up. And I remember there was just like one day that I was just like, wow, I have been through a lot, and I have had two open heart surgeries when I was a kid. And so I really have like felt throughout my life, and especially like in being a young adult and like growing up and maturing, like what is the true impact of that severe of trauma in childhood, physically and emotionally, to go through something that is that life altering. And there's a huge, domino effect that takes place. And like, as I said previously, like with the endometriosis, like that is a product of trauma and like the physiological, domino effect that takes place with, cortisol levels and hormone levels, and, being in high stress and feeling a lot of anxiety, and what that kind of will do to the rest of your body and the processes that take place. And so when I wrote Bones, I really was writing it about, what it was like to go through the open heart surgeries as a child, and kind of being naive and seeing the world through the lens of just childlike wonder. But also, it was a mix of that, as well as me in present day feeling frustration with some of the feelings that I was feeling, of, feeling a little bit othered, and feeling like I couldn't really relate to a lot of people because my experience, in life, and, with this like massive scar on my chest, and the experiences that I've gone through, kind of sets me apart in a way where I always felt a little bit alienated. And so there was a bit of frustration in there, with a lot of the lyrics. And so I just sat on my floor for, I think, like maybe 1 to 3 hours, like somewhere in that window. And I just wrote the whole thing. And I just played around with chords and a capo, and I just found it and I just wrote it. And then I was like, whoa, this is important. And I just did something huge for myself. And it was our first single. And I sent it off to the band, and then they were like, holy shit, okay, let's do this. And then they brought their own elements to it. Zach was always improvising the lead guitar part, and we would always be like, oh, Zach, that was really good, do it again. And then we'd, use that in the final mix. And then Josh would, add all these different parts, and he came up with the bass line. And yeah, it was like a beautiful creative process. And I love recording, and I love making music with the boys. Like, they are both geniuses, and I feel so lucky, and they're some of my best friends now. And yeah, telling stories and kind of transmuting pain and wounds is kind of what keeps me alive, and really is like what I live for. And so I'm just so glad that I get to do this, in this way. And I think when it comes to the band and playing under LöLä and doing that, it's very much a thing that is for me. And it's very much like this sounds bad, but it's kind of like a selfish endeavor, where I'm like, I do this because I love it, and because I need to understand and kind of make sense of my experiences in life. And of course, I can only hope that through doing that, with the band as well as acting, and dancing whenever I get back to it, we'll see, but that I can move others, and I can touch people emotionally in that way, and have other people that feel similarly to me not feel so alone, because I definitely needed that growing up, especially with the heart stuff, and kind of feeling like a freak of nature. Because, the truth is that there's a lot of people that feel that way. We just can get isolated in our communities, or whatever systems that we're in, like Kira is, where she's just completely alienated and doesn't know anything different, and does feel alone, when that's not the case. So yeah, that's kind of where I come from when it comes to my feelings on LöLä and the band.
Thank you for sharing all of that. I imagine it must also be, you mentioned it kind of being like a selfish thing, but it's must be very cathartic for you
Yeah.
going through that process, especially with writing and with
Mhm.
Bones. Like, there are these lyrics like "Hold my bones, watch me as my life implodes," and there was, I know that life it's beautiful, but why don't I feel pretty. And I think those lyrics just really cut deep. And I can't even imagine to begin, thinking about what you went through, especially when you were younger to present day. But the music is so good, what you're putting out. And you had Almost Blue that was released
Yeah.
earlier this month as well. You mentioned, performing live. I think it was December 2022, your first show. But since then, you've played at so many different venues in town, like the Fox, Cobalt, Rickshaw, Redgate, Pearl, Green Auto. Do you have a favorite of the bunch?
Oh my God. Um, I mean, I love them all. I love to play. I mean, every time that, you know, we get asked to play on a bill, we just are so stoked, and we love the community, we love the energy, we love music, we love to dance, we love to play. It's just every time it's a gift, every time it's a win, no matter where. I love every place for different reasons. I think that more recently, I've been spending a lot more time at Green Auto just because a lot of my friends have been playing there more frequently. And I do really love the vibe, and I love the way that it sounds. And it feels cool. Like it's just cool. It's not like a um, traditional venue, so to speak. It really feels like you're in, a auto shop. Like it's cool, and it's decorated cool with like the chandelier and like the red details and the curtains. And um yeah, I was there recently for one of my band my one of my favorite Vancouver bands, LöLä, which they've quickly become like friends of like the bands, like friends of Lola's, and we've played a lot of shows together. And they're so amazing, and they're so lovely, and they're so friendly, and hilarious as well. But they've played at Green Auto a lot, and I went more recently to see them. And I mean, it's just so cool, like to be able to make friends in this world, and cheer people on, and like for everyone to just be so good too. Like everyone's so good. Yeah, Laloon, Piss, Sleepy Gonzalez, Slightest Clue. There's so many, Sundress, Felicia and the Jazz Rejects. There's like so many bands now that I'm just like, you guys are so good. And it's so crazy that you're just like in the neighborhood, like just Vancouver band, like you guys should be playing like massive, massive stages. And I hope that happens for every single one of those bands. And yeah, I love Green Auto. I love the Fox. I love Redgate. I love Cobalt. I love them all. Like I really can't pick a favorite. I think that just more recently I've been at Green Auto more often. So I gotta I gotta give a shout out.
Those are great bands that you listed. I'm a big
Yeah.
fan of Slightest Clue as well, and I know you've seen Hillsborough
Oh
live
my
too.
God,
And
yes, I love
it's just
Hillsborough.
so cool to also have these spaces that still support like independent Vancouver music. And you can add Lola to that list too. I mean, you've had your round of shows, and hopefully you get to do more this
Yeah.
year. What are your other plans for releasing music?
I mean, right now we're just kind of chucking along creatively. We don't, you know, right now we're in a place where I really enjoy not putting too much pressure on the process or too much of a timeline on it, because I think that the best work and the most cathartic work and the most, just work that feels aligned and emotional and real comes from the inspiration that will kind of just jolt you out of place and you have to run to the notebook. But I don't know that you can manufacture that. I don't think that you can kind of like tell somebody to be inspired and write a good song. And I think that, maybe some people, like, I don't know, maybe one day I, wake up and all of a sudden I've evolved and I'm able to do that. One can only dream. But I just, yeah, we kind of record when we feel like we are supposed to. And we're working on some new stuff right now. And I know Zach is always writing, and he comes from, such a like beautiful perspective and such like a unique angle in terms of writing that is completely different to mine. And when we meet in the middle, like we did on Almost Blue, it, something really magical happens in my eyes, and it feels like such a beautiful blend of two worlds that are so different. And that's kind of like how it feels like to like just be homies with him. Like he's like one of my best friends. And I'm sure you would say the same. But yeah, like he brings like a very like folk element and singer-songwriter element, and just, he's great with like an acoustic guitar and just being really raw and um real. And I love a distortion pedal. And then Josh is just like a musical mastermind that can just compose an entire production of a song just in his room. And we're like, okay, do you still need us, or are we getting kicked out of the band? Or are you just gonna do a solo project now? But yeah, anyways, we're recording. We hope to put out an EP sometime soon, hopefully within the year. And when we're all in the same city and we're all on the same page, and we feel the fire burning to get on a stage and play together and get out there, and that feels aligned, then we'll go do that. And I love doing that. I love performing, obviously, like I said. And there's a certain level of vulnerability that is required to play music live that is not the same as acting. Like, it's just not the same at all. And I've said this to all of my friends, like everybody knows this, like I get so nervous to play a music show. Like it's unbelievable how nervous I get. And then people are always like, but you literally act in front of like hundreds of people every day. You have cried in front of people take after take. You have screamed at people in front of other people. Like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, I cannot explain it. It is so vulnerable. So vulnerable. And it's so alive, and it feels so fragile. And that's part of why it's so exciting, and it's addictive, to be completely honest. And I love it, and I never want to stop performing. And I'd love to go on tour. And we always talk about that. We always talk about opening for a really cool band, or playing festivals someday. And even like doing a tour of Canada would be so awesome. Our friends BLB Point were recently doing that, and they're killing it. And those guys are so amazing, and they totally inspire us in that way. And yeah, like we're kind of open to anything and everything. We just, we're just a couple of pals that like to make music together and have a good time. So yeah, no ceilings.
I think it's so nice that you don't put pressure on yourself, because that's so important as an artist. Like, you don't want to have that like weighing down on you where, okay, like I have to record now. I have to put out a song. And if you let it happen naturally, that's sometimes like the best kind of recipe for that, and the collaboration that clearly happens between you and your bandmates. You posted a teaser, I think, on your personal Instagram that
Mhm.
you were working on a new song. It was like My Insights Are on the Outside Turning Around. And it was about being like a highly sensitive
Mhm.
person, what kind of images you put in. That sounded so good. It was so visceral and captivating as well.
Thank you so much. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I I that song, yeah, that's what I was working on last night. And that song is really, really about, yeah, being a neurodivergent person and what that really means. I almost feel like it's like the distant cousin of Bones, where it's kind of like on the other side of things, like kind of like maybe a few years along. Like it's like a more uh elevated, more evolved version of Bones, like me now versus me then when I wrote Bones. So, but it's kind of on a similar topic. And yeah, that's a fun one. I'm excited to see how that one kind of manifests creatively, because we're still kind of in a collaborative process with it. But yeah, I'm definitely proud of the vulnerability that I'm really honing in on for that one. It's important. And um catharsis is something that I like constantly chase, and really like fuels me. And I always want to be growing and learning about myself and what it means to be human, and the different ways that that can look. And yeah.
I think that listeners will really appreciate that and the work that you and your bandmates and LöLä are putting in. So I can't wait to see what's next for you. I have one more question, our signature question. If you could be any ice cream flavor, which would you be and why?
Pistachio, because it's my favorite. Everything pistachio flavored is my favorite. If I see a pistachio flavored macaroon, I'm buying it, and I don't even have a sweet tooth. If I see like I had a pistachio flavored birthday cake a couple years ago, that was the best day of my life. I I don't know what it is. I am obsessed, and I also my favorite color is green, not blue, green, but blue is a close second now, because of what it means to me. But yeah, love the color green because of forests and Earth, Mother Earth. I'm a true BC person. But yeah, pistachio. It's fire. Like it's so good. Either that or like God, I don't even know. Like sometimes I like chocolate. Like chocolate's fire too, but in a different way, obviously. But yeah, pistachio. Final answer. Final answer.
I like it. I feel like it's very on brand for you and like the entire conversation, like everything that you kind of hold near, especially being from BC. And I'm just so appreciative of you taking the time to chat so much about the show and your music and Vancouver. So thank you so much, Clara, for taking the time.
Of course, this has been a blast, a dream, and thank you for asking such wonderful questions that were so inquisitive and complex and nuanced and really let me go there and think. Like I really was catching myself being like, oh, like that's I haven't thought about that. Like, oh my goodness, like this is so exciting, and it kind of fuels me to just reflect and explore creatively. That's why I do what I do is conversations like these. So thank you.
Of course, and I'm so honored to have been there and been able to host it with you. And I can't wait for everyone to meet Kira and Bet as well. And hopefully we can catch up again about LöLä in the future. But until then, for all those watching, you can catch Clara as Kira, and Bet season 1 is out now on Netflix. And be sure to listen to LöLä. New music will be coming in the future, and we will see you next time.